Hi, welcome to another episode of You Haven't Seen What? A married couple's quest to rectify the wrongs of their partner never seeing culturally relevant movies. I'm Joelle.
I'm Parry.
And we are the married couple.
Yes, we are. We are. In fact, we're so married, we have an anniversary coming up. See, I remembered.
Hashtag second take, just saying, folks. Always makes me look bad.
I remembered the first take.
Sure. You remembered and then you forgot. Sure.
Hey, you intentionally did it as the inverse of our birthdays so that it would not be forgotten, particularly by me.
Yes, I mean there are multiple reasons why we picked that date, but yes, that was a good rationale also. So I wouldn't forget it either, quite honestly. Makes it very easy for the both of us. But we are releasing this movie review, I think, the day before, on Halloween, hopefully. And it's the day before our anniversary.
Yes. We wanted to release at least one scary movie in the month of October.
Although I don't know if Christine's really scary.
Well, kind of depends on your feelings about classic cars. You know, how much they cost to keep running is terrifying.
Okay. Dum-dum.
Having had one.
That's where we're at, folks. But yeah, so it's Halloween, it's almost our anniversary. I still like him. I think he still likes me.
Yeah, most days. Yes, all the time.
That's exactly how I feel too, honey. Don't worry. He starved me again. I'm not sick this week though. So it should make out for a very interesting episode. So if I just seem bitey, that's just my hangry because he's withholding food again, as usual, all the time.
It just makes for a much better pod if you're right on the edge of insanity.
Oh, I'm not on the edge. I'm there. Yes. I'm there.
Excellent.
I know. He does this shit on purpose, folks. He's not the nice man that you think that he is when you meet him. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get into Christine. But before we do that, we actually were able to see Christine at a redone theater locally in town, sort of.
It's actually an old church, which is pretty cool.
Why are you stealing all of my thunder today? All of the thunder. Okay. Just don't say anything. So it was part of Popcorn Fright's Wicked's Weekend. They celebrated John Carpenter movies. Shout out to them for putting on a really awesome festival. We really were able to attend a couple of the movies, and that was super fun. So, and we will be attending more of them. So really great job, very smoothly run, and it's local, and it's sort of one of those things where you don't always get great things like that in a large city like ours. And it was shown at the Savour Cinema, which was formerly known as the Cinema Paradiso, which was a Methodist church back in the 40s. And then in the 1960s, do you know what it was?
That I don't know. A movie theater.
No. It actually was used to courthouse records because it's near the courthouses downtown.
Yes, it is, like right across the street.
Exactly. And then they went ahead and they took it over. It was Cinema Paradiso. And then why it's either Savor or Savour, Savor. So I'm thinking that it's Savour only because it's somebody's last name, but it could be Savor. And Mr. Savor has taken it over. Savor has taken it over and really helped rebuild the cinema back to where it is. So as a result, he gets his name on the front of the building and has helped to go ahead and publicize the cinema, which is really great because local cinemas like that with literally one theater, and it's such a great screen.
A really nice screen and projection system.
Right.
And sound.
Yeah. And bringing like independent films and like film festivals to the area. It's super fun.
Now, for those who don't know, what city is it in?
Oh, Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I think I said Fort Lauderdale.
And quite honestly, the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area really has a dearth of great indie cinemas like this. There are so few of them here. And so it was a really, really nice discovery and a really, really neat and well-curated John Carpenter celebration. So it was really a great series.
Super fun, and we had a great time. So take it away with our synopsis, or do you have anything else to add?
Well, I did have one other thing I needed to jump back to. I was doing some editing work, and I needed a piece from another one of our podcasts, and I happened to notice something that I thought was a little bit amusing, and it was that we were talking about Charles Dance, who is he's Numsa, what is it? Numsa in Sardo.
Yeah,
Sardo
Numsa
in
Golden Child.
In The Golden Child, and we were talking about him being in Game of Thrones, and the name that you referred to him as, and that I agreed with, was Tyrone Lannister.
I didn't say Tyrone.
You did actually say Tyrone.
Oh no, that's
And I'm just thinking of what a different character he would be if his name was Tyrone.
No, you only assumed that he would have been black.
I was making no assumptions.
I already know where you're going with that. You only assume that he would be black if he was named Tyrone. I mean, granted, Erykah Badu did write a whole entire song about Tyrone, but still. No, actually, you better call Tyrone, right? So it was the friend, but she intimated, basically.
But it did get me thinking about cameos and appearances, and of course, Ed Sheeran had his cameo in Game of Thrones, and reminded me of the fact that we went and saw Garbage perform this past weekend up in D.C., and they were amazing. But it also reminded me of our conversation we had with Shirley Manson a while back when we met her and the rest of Garbage, and that we were talking about the fact that she had been a Terminator in the Sarah Connor Chronicles,
right?
And that Cersei in Game of Thrones was Sarah Connor in the Sarah Connor Chronicles. We were like, can't you two have a reunion and, you have a cameo in Game of Thrones? But no dice, apparently.
I like how you're really stretching the tying in of all of this.
I had to include Shirley Manson somehow in this.
I mean, you could just say Shirley Manson, and that would have been fine too.
I just think it's a great piece of trivia that she plays a T-1000 in the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
I agree with you. That's a great piece of trivia. I don't know that it's topical, but it is a great piece of trivia.
Trivia is the currency of our time, whether or not it's topical. So, you can throw them in anywhere.
Honey, then you're a freaking multi-billionaire, if that's true. And we're not, so...
When it comes to trivial knowledge, I am rich.
You are rich.
Truly rich.
Trivia knowledge and bullshit. Truly rich.
Oh, yes. What is the exchange rate between trivia and bullshit?
Is it not the same thing?
No.
To me, it might be. Anyway, so let's... we could rate you by how well your trivia team does.
Mm-hmm.
I am in way too much analysis for my dissertation at this point.
Yes.
To be having this conversation. But yeah, so are you going to do a synopsis?
Yes.
Do you have one? Is it short?
Yes.
Okay.
The basic synopsis for Christine, which I love the tagline, body by Plymouth, soul by Satan. But I have written, boy meets car, boy loses car regenerates into original glory and seeks her revenge upon all those who wronged her.
That's not bad. You want to hear mine?
Sure.
Killer car might not choose its owners, but it certainly chooses its victims.
Oh, that's good.
I know, right?
I think that needs to go on the Blu-ray.
Isn't that good?
Yeah, I like it.
I
like
know.
it. John Carpenter's going to call you to write all his taglines now.
I'm sure. All of his taglines.
It's awesome.
Thanks.
She is seductive. She is passionate. She is possessive. She is pure evil. She is Christine, a 1958 Plymouth Fury, possessed by hell. There is no place you can hide, no place you can run, and nothing you can do can stop her. Because how do you kill something that can't possibly be alive? Christine, body by Plymouth, soul by Satan.
So yeah, this is an old favorite of mine because it is on the list of movies that my grandfather showed me that he probably should not have.
Yay, Pap Pap.
Because watching it now, I'm like, yeah, this was probably kind of inappropriate for my age range. This was like you seeing April Fool's Day at a sleepover, but this wasn't one of your family members who showed it to you. So
No, I had not seen this movie.
yes, especially with the knowledge I have now that because they wanted an R rating, they kicked up the cursing quite a bit. It's not very gory, but they were like, we got to say fuck a whole lot in here because we want a higher rating so people will take this seriously as a horror movie. So knowing that, I don't think my grandfather really connected that at the time, how much cursing there is in this. But he did warn me about a few terms that he was not going to define for me. And but yes, I feel like it was probably inappropriate at that age, but I did form a connection to it. And in fact, it is why my very first car was a classic car.
What car was it?
Well, I found a 1957 Plymouth Plaza, which looks a lot like a Plymouth Fury in a vacant lot. And I just kept wanting to get that because there was no way this car was restorable. And so what I did end up doing was buying a sparkly green 1953 Oldsmobile with a Oldsmobile Rocket 88 with a ton of chrome. And it was a gorgeous car. But yeah, Christine led directly to my interest in a car like that.
Oh, I mean, that makes sense. You had a ton of older cars. I don't know. I think this is only where didn't you, right? Growing up, you had a couple of different older cars.
No, I never did. I was always interested in them, but I only had the one.
Well, classic car.
Yeah.
And then you worked on other cars that were...
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, just because my parents would keep a Chevy Caprice forever doesn't make them classic.
Fun.
In baby blue.
I don't know. I think this is where we differ. So, like, my dad is notorious for this, but essentially, I've pretty much almost always driven a new car or newer car because he thinks that, oh my God, things are dying.
Yeah, water just went everywhere, so we got to pause for a minute. Let me get you paper towels.
Pause for the cause.
What cause is that?
Hashtag Duppy. So, yeah, so I think that's the thing about my dad. He always wanted me to have a reliable car because I was always on the road doing something. So I always had a newer car or a new car. And I think the longest he ever let me keep a car was 5 years. And then I had to get another car because he said it was too old and the maintenance on it. The car would just start. He's like, the maintenance, you're just going to pay too much money. You might as well be driving something newer and not have to pay all the maintenance on your car. Like, we barely ever change tires. If I change tires on my car, it's because I think I've only ever done that twice.
Change tires?
Change tires.
Twice?
On 2 different cars.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, because he always made me go ahead and just get a newer car.
I guess there is always the trade-off between a constant car payment versus the unexpected expense of something breaking with age. So
Exactly. So he was just like, listen, just know exactly what it's going to be. Your car will always be reliable and up to date. So he's not a classic car believer. So this is where we differed.
And they are tremendously expensive to keep operating because the parts are hard to find. Even the white wall tires are not always easy to come by. And so there is a whole lifestyle around having a classic or antique car.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've had friends who've had them, but I didn't have one. And then it's true, the upkeep and just like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Do you know? Is the AC going to go out? Weird things like that.
AC.
If you had AC, right.
If you had even seat belts, which many did not because they were prior to that requirement.
Right.
But, quite honestly, I would have taken my car, killing a few people and regenerating itself just to not have to keep up with the maintenance. So had my car been a Christine, I would have been okay with that.
Yes, because your soul is black.
Well, it kind of depends on who, but I had a few classmates I didn't like at the time.
Oh, boy. Steering off to a very wrong area. So I guess, re-seeing Christine, because, it was it was an oldie for you, but re-seeing Christine, how do you feel like it held up?
I feel like the special effects actually held up extremely well. Not that there were that many in it. It's really the one sequence where Christine regenerates herself. And it is obvious that it's film run in reverse, but you still look at it and go, how did they do that effect to run it in reverse? And so I had to look it up, and it's a production note, but I'll give it now, is that they actually used a vacuum system and plastic body panels to pull the car inward. And they had it upside down to give the gravity a different sense, or to give you a sense of gravity when the glass and things went back in. But they sucked the car in and then played the film in reverse, so it appears to be popping back out and rebuilding itself. But it works really, really well. It's very effective.
It does. It is really effective, actually. I was surprised, especially since we had seen several horror movies whose special effects did not hold up. Which we might be reviewing in sometime soon.
One we've already seen, Golden Child. But
Really? I already told you. I don't ever think that was right. No, the Pepsi can scene holds up.
Pepsi can does.
Okay,
you're right,
so
you're
I
right.
don't know what you're talking about. God, what a broad generalization. Hater.
Now the question is, how did you feel about Christine, having never seen this? And it's not one a lot of people talk about. It's really a lesser-known John Carpenter. And even as far as Stephen King's work goes, it's not really one of his more well-known and talked about.
Okay, so I do have to say this. I'm totally biased because I love Keith Gordon from The Legend of Billie Jean.
Yes.
So I'm biased and I just think that he's already amazing. So I was like, oh, wow, more Keith Gordon. Okay, I'm good with this. So I, of course, loved it.
And the whole thing? I mean, we're going to get to our good, bad, and ugly.
I think that that's part of it. I think overall, I would say that I liked it more than I disliked it. I would say about 70-ish%. So if I was giving it a rating, I would say 7 out of 10.
All right. Now, here's part of the conversation we had at the time that we saw it. How do you think the atmosphere in which you saw it, which was an actual theater environment with people who were excited to see this specific film, how do you think that affected your viewing and your feeling about it overall?
Yeah, so I actually think that really helped, quite honestly. Had we been at home, I probably would have been doing something else. Which I do anyway, but having to be in a theater where everyone's really excited about watching this, where, it's literally one of the favorites of the guys running the festival and he's so passionate about it. Whenever you're in an environment when everyone is geeking out, you almost instinctively geek out too. Mm-hmm. What is it, like mass groupthink and shit? Like you're automatically pulled into that arena. So that definitely helped it. It didn't hurt it at all. And then they had a really great Q&A afterwards where they Skyped in Keith Gordon.
Which was fantastic.
And he spent a good hour with us.
Yeah. And he obviously not only had a good time making the film, but still loves the process. And of course, Keith Gordon is now a director of a ton of things, and he directs episodes of Better Call Saul, of Legion, Homeland. I mean, some really great shows. Yeah, Dexter. He directed a film that a lot of people don't know about that I really love.
The Chocolate War.
Yeah. I was going to say It Came Upon a Midnight Clear. Or A Midnight Clear, actually, I think it's called. And I really love that movie. And like I said, not well known. We should watch it as one of ours to review. But but Keith Gordon, he's always fun, and he's really enjoyable in this.
Wait, you're going too fast.
Okay, sorry, I just got excited about Keith Gordon.
Yeah, so I think we need to actually do the quote at this point. What's your favorite quote? What's this podcast on?
There were a lot of fun lines, but I'm gonna go with "I'm selling this shithole and buying a condo."
Okay.
Yeah, just because I thought that Robert Prosky was great in it. So as the crotchety caretaker, proprietor of the garage. Yeah, I thought
Darnell's, right?
Yeah, I thought he was a lot of fun. So
okay, mine is okay. Show me.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's absolutely perfect.
I mean, it's a really great line that Keith Gordon basically says to Christine, like, all right, I think I figured out that you are sentient and show me what you got.
Yeah.
I dig it.
It's the moment.
It is the moment.
So yeah, it's
where it
perfect.
all happens.
So, and again, the beginning of that great scene, and really kind of that big transformation for. We've been seeing it happen already. We've been seeing Arnie, and with a name like Arnie, you know he's going to be dorky and nerdy. But we've seen the transformation already start to happen, where he starts out as a complete dork and he fixes up this car, and suddenly he's dating the girl everyone wants to go out with, which I have to say, when I saw it, it was the total nerdy boy dream. You get a cool car, and then all of a sudden you can date any girl you want. That was until the early 2000s, when at that point you had found a .com and date any girl you want. But I think maybe it's part of why I wanted that Oldsmobile, was I thought it was going to increase my popularity in some way. I do think that was at the heart of it, really, when I look back on it. So I think I wasn't quite Arnie, but I was pretty dorky.
Agreed. Get the car, get the girl. Is that what the deal is?
Yeah, that's what I thought. And that is a big guy thing, is you think you're going to get the car, and all of a sudden your life's going to change, and particularly your social and dating life is going to change. Now, that's it for guys. I know that it can be the same for girls with a car, but is there something else? Is there like a thing that women look to in high school and go like, oh, this is what's going to change my popularity or my social life?
You're talking to the wrong fucking person. I didn't give a shit about being popular. I was just doing me.
I didn't want to be popular. I just wanted to date.
I didn't give a shit about dating.
Oh, okay.
I'm really weird. It's challenging that way. I really didn't care.
So yeah, that was why this movie appealed to me, and I think why I tried to emulate it to some degree. Because I drove around listening to all the 50s songs and sort of Arnieing it up.
Oh boy, that explains a lot.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like my 53, named Madeline, had a personality of her own.
Why Madeline? We all have names for our cars, right? So
yeah, and I know that men and women both name their cars, but men always seem to name their cars after women.
No, I name my cars always after women, because it's definitely a woman.
Although I had read somewhere that you could consider a coupe or a convertible female, but a four-door like a sedan was always male. But I don't subscribe to that theory.
No, they're all women.
I called it Madeline because of Virginia Madsen's character in Electric Dreams.
Oh, God.
Mm-hmm. Another Pat movie.
Explains so much about you. Explains so much about you.
Yep.
Wow.
Those were two things that I had an obsession for, were Virginia Madsen and antique cars, and so I merged the two together.
Wow. I don't think I've always named my cars. I mean, I think the one that I really remember naming was more recent. It was my red Prius, and I named it Janet.
So that you could say, damn it, Janet.
No, it's actually because I did say damn it, because the GPS got me lost somewhere, and I was like, damn it, Janet. And it was red, and so it was perfect.
And if you don't know that reference, we're not telling.
If you don't know that reference, don't listen to our podcast anymore.
Because that's one we can't review, because we've seen it plenty of times.
You cannot. I actually haven't seen it plenty of times, funny enough.
Okay, well, I guess we could review it.
No, I don't want to review it. I don't think it should ever be reviewed. I don't think anyone should ever truthfully, critically take that apart. That's a bad idea. Don't touch it.
It's just meant to be what it is.
It is meant to be exactly what it is. So, yeah, I think that's the one I truly remember naming. And then after that, I've named him.
Now, I do have to wonder what this movie did for women named Christine in terms of their dating life in high school. Did people or dating life in general?
Give me a break and a half. Seriously? You think this really fucking impacted that much? I mean, the movie wasn't that. Actually, this is a very good segue into the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't bad. So good. because I have a whole lot to talk about other things. What was your good, honey?
I think we already talked about my good, is that the visuals in this are so fun and so good. Of course, the car regeneration effect is fantastic. But even the scenes where Christine is like shoving herself through a small space in order to kill one of the bullies is just a really effectively done scene. And so things like that, I think, really held up well. And I think they're, to me, the best part about the movie.
I would definitely concur with that piece. I picked Keith Gordon as my good because I'm just biased, as I've already stated. So I won't go into too much of that. Even though he makes a couple of weird, interesting acting choices in playing Arnie, that might just be the director too. That just might be Carpenter's decision as well.
Well, I know
that
that
such a stark contrast.
Yeah, he gets really
squirrely.
Yeah, as the movie goes on, and particularly in that scene with his parents when he grabs his father's neck and is being very violent with him.
Yeah.
But I do like in the Skype conference with Keith Gordon that he did talk about that and talked about how Carpenter likes to keep a film set light and suggests that trying to take a movie like these too seriously is not going to work, that you have to have a little bit of humor injected into it or a little bit of levity to break that tension and to even though it's a horror movie, still to make it fun and make it work. And so I know that was direction from Carpenter that led to some of those.
Right. So what's your bad?
My bad would be the film's pacing. They spend a lot of time at the beginning of the film trying to establish who these characters are and what their motivations are. But with all the time they spend and all the time it takes to get to Christine's first kill, I still felt like the characters were far too two-dimensional. That they could have done a lot more, not only to fill out Arnie and Dennis, but to also fill out Lee and even to fill out the bullies, because they're such basic bullies. They're just so thin and two-dimensional that you feel zero for them when they're killed. And now, admittedly, as being someone who was a dorky guy and who was bullied to some degree, I took some joy in watching Christine not only run over, but just literally destroy some of these villains. Although I think that the one particular villain, the Travolta wannabe,
Buddy Repperton.
Yes, Buddy Repperton. I was thinking, is that Buddy Revel's uncle, perhaps? Because they seem to share some similar character traits and an affinity for knives. But, they seem to just be too thin. Although a fun little note is one of his cronies, Moochie, Malcolm Denaire. He was actually in Flashdance. He was Lee Ving's little crony in that one, so he's made a career out of being a crony. Now, Buddy Repperton, who's William Ostrander, he's running for office in California. He's also a farmer, but he's running for office in this upcoming election as a Democrat.
Random.
Yeah.
Totally random.
So check out his website. It's actually interesting.
Okay. So yeah, I concur with you. The slow build killed me. I'm like, when is the car going to kill people? I don't understand. It's like an hour and a half in before we really get any sort of, for lack of a better phrase, taste of blood. Like, this is a horror movie, no? Like, where's the horror?
And I think some of that space, like I said, could have been filled with really getting to know some of the characters. Now we do watch Arnie's transition, and he starts becoming, they intentionally did this where he starts dressing in a more 50s style. He becomes a little more of a greaser look.
I feel like he's just embodying the previous owner almost.
Well, and he starts wearing a red jacket, which is like Christine. But you make a very interesting observation, and the book is actually vastly different from the film. And one of the things in the book is that Christine is not born bad. as she is in the film.
Haha, I told you. I don't think she was born bad in general. I think it's the taste of blood.
Well, I liked your theory. Tell your theory on this.
Okay, so here's the theory. Like, I didn't really think that inherently Christine was born bad. Like, this is the idea of, like, tabula rasa. Like, you're a blank slate and you come into this world and you're shaped essentially by your world, right? So the idea is that hood accident that was in the very beginning was just that. It was an accident.
Where the hood crushes a guy's hand on the assembly line.
Exactly. But now Christine has sort of had her first real taste of blood, if you will. Her first, not kill, but just that same thing. And it triggers something inside of her and she wants more. She wants to explore this further. This is also true of serial offenders, right? So they don't always... They might have had a harder life growing up or whatever, but the reality is that how you transition from doing one thing to another, a more violent crime, is that you get this taste of blood, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And you just want to keep repeating and you want to keep seeing how it progresses. So I think of Christine as sort of that. Like, she wasn't necessarily born bad, but through circumstances and through unfortunate accidents, she happened to be a part of something, and she just wants to replicate it because it triggered something inside of her.
Well, and I love that theory that what it suggests is that all cars have a soul or have some sort of are sentient in some way, as we've talked about naming your car, and we all kind of want cars to have a life of their own. It's why the movie Cars was so successful, is we all like this idea of cars being alive to some degree. And I really like that theory that they all have it. Some just happen to develop a taste for evil.
Yeah. I mean, how many times I think has anyone ever said, like, oh my gosh, I was so exhausted, I don't know how I made it home. And mm-hmm. people always talk about this idea of muscle memory. But sometimes I just feel like your car's really just taking you home. And it's not, automatic pilot necessarily, but
it's muscle car memory.
It's muscle car memory, exactly. Exactly.
Well, interestingly enough, that assembly line sequence is not in the book.
Right. It's not at all.
No. In fact, there is no life attributed to Christine outside of the LeBay brothers. It's actually Robert LeBay. Listen deeply to the sound of my voice and know that I did not say Robert LeBay. I said Roland LeBay. You will only hear Roland LeBay, not Robert. When I snap my fingers, you will be back in the podcast and only hear Roland LeBay. It's in the film, it is condensed down into one character that we meet, and that's George, and he's selling Christine because his brother has recently died. But in the book, the brother, and we hear the story from George that...
Oh, who is this book by? I don't think we ever said that it was a Stephen King novel.
Maybe we did not.
No, we did not.
But yes, it is from a book by Stephen King. And I think I did mention it was one of King's lesser known.
Oh, you did. Good job.
People know what it is and what it's about, but it's not one they really bring up in his top list. So in the movie, you hear the story of how the daughter suffocated in the car and how the wife killed herself later, and his brother's connection to this car as told by George, but we never see or hear anything more about Robert. But in the book, the car is actually possessed by the brother, by Robert. He is actually the one who is controlling Christine and Arnie. And so, in fact, in the book, he is sitting in the back seat as a corpse and talking to Arnie and sort of taunting him and encouraging him and doing a general mindfuck from the back seat and being the worst backseat driver of all time. But that was removed from the screenplay, and partially because a film that had come out at the time or a little bit before was American Werewolf in London. And you have a similar scenario going on where a character that is dead is speaking to our main character throughout the movie. And so they didn't want to do the same thing. So they removed that entirely. And so they just decided that Christine would just be evil from the beginning instead of having taken on the soul, and possibly the daughter having been sacrificed by her father to make Christine this receptacle for his soul somehow, that they would just make it that Christine was born bad or was just evil from her early days, and that she was operating on her own. And so that's one place that they diverge dramatically. But one thing that did remain is when Arnie keeps using the word shitter, he starts using that quite a bit as the film goes on. That was actually one of Robert LeBay's words that he used in the book a lot. And so it was Arnie taking on that personality, but there's no connection to it in the movie.
That was really long for just your good. I'm afraid to ask you what your ugly is. But I'm going to ask, what is your ugly?
Well, for one, there were a whole lot of classic Plymouths destroyed to make this movie. And that makes me very sad that how many Furies and...
Belvederes.
Yes, and Savoy, I think, was another one. There were quite a few that had to be sacrificed to make this film. So that is truly and deeply sad to me. But I would say beyond that, and this is a very 70s, 80s thing, as we've talked about, is that the film is focused on these high school guys, and they spend a tremendous amount of time talking about having sex with, or just talking about the anatomy of all the girls in the school. And yes, that is high school males.
Oh, but only high school males? Yeah, we don't have an issue with objectifying females as a country. No,
yes.
Not at all.
And so that ages really poorly. And I would have liked to have seen more of the perspective of Lee, or some to develop her character, or some of the other women that are in the film, because they just are not really developed in any real way. In fact, there's even the scene where she gets all jealous of Christine. They're at the drive-in, and she runs out of the car when they're making out, and she's like, I can't do this. And, you care more about that car than you care about me. But there's no connection there. There could have been a scene where, I don't know, she spills some popcorn and he loses his temper. She leans against the car and he thinks she's going to scratch it somehow. And so there's no connection there. She just seems like a jealous and frantic girlfriend that for no good reason, and so therefore seeming like a bit of an idiot. And I felt like there should have been a scene that helped that to make sense as to why, because we know he's obsessed with Christine, and that Christine is obsessed with him, and that's why she tries to kill Lee right after that by suffocating her in the car. But with Christine, of course, Bumblebee style, playing "You Keep on Knocking, but You Can't Come In." And in fact, I really do think they stole Bumblebee's speaking through the radio.
I totally think they did from this movie, and yeah. I think it's genius.
Yes, the way Christine is communicating cryptically through all of these songs she plays.
Exactly. I love it. I think that's like one of the best parts of the film in general.
Now, how about you? What's your ugly?
That's pretty much it. I didn't even write one down because I think I'm becoming desensitized to all that shit at this point. But yeah, it would be the same thing.
It's amazing how much of it there is in film, isn't there?
I know. I feel like we almost had like the same good, bad, and ugly this time. It's like we're merging to form one person. Merge to form Devastator.
Oh, I had started to say
it. Did you suck a con, Mr.
really
John? Suck a con, Mr. John.
Well, I also think that...
Are you becoming me or am I becoming you? I think you're becoming me.
Obviously. I would say that, although I guess the question there is, as we talk about Devastator, was Christine a Transformer?
Like an early type of a Transformer?
Was she a Decepticon?
Kind of, sort of. Maybe. Because she could pop back out. That was pretty
right?
cool.
So, but also starts to beg the question, was Herbie the love bug like a Christine?
See, look, Christine, pre-Bumblebee on my notes.
Proto-bee.
Proto-bee, exactly. I don't know. Anyway, so this really... Go ahead. You had a thought.
I was going to say, and now that they're going to do a movie with Bumblebee as a bug, connects to Herbie, connects to... Okay, sorry. Getting way too deep into that.
You are getting way too deep because Herbie predates Christine.
Yes, by quite a bit.
Exactly.
60s. So.
Right. So it's Herbie, Christine together. They have a love child, and it's Bumblebee.
Yeah, I like it.
Part
I
good,
like it.
part bad. I don't know.
So it does remind me, did you ever see the Quantum Leap episode where it turns out
Love fucking Quantum Leap.
it's an amazing show. But where it turns out it was a Halloween episode, and it turns out that they were actually that the kid who's in the movie is Stephen King, because at one point they're in front of his house and the mom calls the dog, "Here, Cujo," and then you see they have a 58 Plymouth Fury in the driveway, and you see all the pieces of where he got his inspiration for his films from, or his books.
Right. I don't know that I saw that one.
Yeah, we'll have to dig that one out.
I need to rewatch it because I'm younger than you.
Thank you.
So
for
I was
the
watching
reminder.
a lot of that with my mom.
I'd almost forgotten.
So I remember it, but I don't necessarily remember all of them in detail unless I've seen them more recently, like a rerun. But it's funny you said, "Hey, Cujo," and Walter walked in.
He is our Cujo.
He isn't the Cujo. I think Jesse's a Cujo.
I thought of another kind of bad thing in here was on the tropometer for this film, the black guy does die first. In fact, the only black guy in the film dies within the first 5 minutes of the film.
Well,
For Christine's first real victim.
Yeah.
But, he was smoking a cigar inside of her, and that pissed her off. So,
Exactly.
was there a Clinton reference in there? Sorry.
Oh, God. Production notes with Parry. Hey. I feel like we've already been in this sequence for quite a while now.
Oh, well, there's a lot of good stuff in here. And so, yeah, I think we kept jumping into it. But as I was saying about destroying a whole lot of cars, the accounts differ, but it appears that somewhere close to 30 cars or so were used in the making of this. And not all of them were full cars. Some of them were cars that had rubber panels that were meant to be crashed or bumped into things. And, some were just a shell, some were pulled along on tracks, but still a lot of them were destroyed. But a few did survive, and they are out there as Christine movie cars around the country. In fact, one of them is in Pensacola, Florida, and she even has a Facebook page and a Twitter account. It's at, let me just make sure I get this right. I believe it is, Christine Movie Car. You can go and check it out. And my favorite was that there was a recent update that said that she'd come through the hurricane all right. So she survived. Yet again, of course she did, right? So, because if anything happened, she just regenerated herself.
Exactly.
But I did not realize how close to people's heart this film is. There's only a few show cars left, but there's so many people who really have formed a connection to it, to the point where on this Facebook page, or no, sorry, it's not on the Facebook page, to one of these sites, there is a Christine wedding where she gets married to Pennywise, the clown from It, of course. And there's a whole bachelorette party, and it's a little over the top. It's a little much, but it is
#fan fiction.
Yes, it is serious fan fiction, but kind of fun that there's so much out there. I had no idea. And in fact, there's little references in the trailer for the new It. One of the kids is wearing a t-shirt that has a car on it that looks like one of the cars from Cars. It's a car with eyes and personality, but it actually appears to be Christine. Also in Sharknado 4, that also stars Alexandra Paul, who you might know from Baywatch. She is in Sharknado 4, and they have a Christine cameo in the film. There's also another one in Ready Player One. Christine is one of the cars in the film. So I again, lots of reference back to. Pause for just a second, because I've been trying to find that one website.
Okay, I was just going to give the rundown of the numbers because I didn't.
Oh yeah, go ahead and give the rundown while I find my next piece here.
Okay, so here's the rundown for Christine, directed by John Carpenter, produced by Richard Kobritz and Larry J. Franco, screenplay by Bill Phillips, based on Christine by Stephen King, which coincidentally was released after production started. So they actually had the screenplay prior to the release of the actual book.
Yeah, he was so popular at the time that they wanted it before it even was published. Although he had pitched Cujo, and they were like, I don't think that would make a very good film. And so they went with Christine.
Yeah, Carpenter took it more as a job, not really as a project, if that makes any sense. Like, he was just like, I just need something to pay the bills.
Well, also, he wanted to move on quickly from
the Thing.
The disastrous failure of The Thing.
But The Thing was so good.
And it has turned out to actually be what many consider one of his master works. I have no idea why it failed at the time. Maybe people just weren't ready for that level of gore and creepiness, and I don't know. There's something about it people weren't ready for, but it's actually great, and which we also saw.
We'll review it at a later time.
Yes.
So cinematography by Donald Morgan, edited by Marion Rothman. I think that's right, Marion Rothman. Production company Columbia Pictures, Delphi Premiere Productions, Polar Film, distributed by Columbia Pictures. Release date was December 9th, 1983. Running time about 110 minutes. Too long. Budget was $10 million. Box office, they raked in $21 million, and 69% approval by Rotten Tomato, but only 63% of audiences approve. You either liked it or you didn't.
Yeah. There's not a lot of in between, but
so yeah, it pretty much bombed at the box office for something that was a King-based movie at the time.
Which again, I feel like it is better than people think it is, but I see some of the issues are. But I still love it. And by the way, it is ChristineMovieCar.com that has the whole wedding. And so it's the same Christine Movie Car as in that the Twitter account and Facebook are connected to. But there's a whole nother one out there where it was actually a born-on date of October 31st, 1957. Was the birth date of this car, where the date was rolled off the assembly line, which is pretty awesome, actually. But I think it's very cool that people have that much attachment, including John Carpenter himself, because he's been on tour the last couple years doing his music live, and there's some great videos we need to post of he and his son doing one of the themes to one of the films, but one of my favorites is they did a short film of him driving around in Christine, and they're playing the Christine theme, and then he's chasing, of course, a blonde down an alleyway, and it just kind of ends up looking sort of creepy when he opens the door to invite her into the car, but it's still a fun short video. So you mentioned the writer of the screenplay, that is Bill Phillips, and he actually had worked with Carpenter before. Carpenter was actually set to direct Firestarter. And then after the failure of The Thing, he was fired from the project. And Phillips went with him. Even though he had written a draft of Firestarter already, he jumped off. And then they worked together on this. And a fun little piece of trivia is that Phillips actually had a scene in the film with, of all people, George Thorogood, because of the song Bad to the Bone. And they have a scene in the wrecking yard at the end, but apparently their acting was so bad the scene was cut. In fact, Phillips is like, I don't think they ever actually even intended on using it. I think they just wanted to get Thorogood on the set. But yeah, they were running a crane or something at the end, and yeah, they were completely cut out of it.
I have my own production note. They used a multitude of cars in order to create like over 15, I want to say like 17 cars or something is something that I read. But really the Christine that we know is really a Belvedere. It's actually not a Fury. It's a souped up Belvedere.
Yeah. Yep. And there were issues with the whole
push start ignition.
Well, I was going to say issues with, there were. Apparently Keith Gordon had a lot of trouble getting the car started much of the time because the push button ignition did not work often. But there were issues in the description of the car because, first of all, it didn't come in that color. It only came in like a beige color originally. And so they added in a line about it being a special order. But also, when King first wrote the book, he wrote it as a 2-door when only 4 doors were available at the time. And so there were a number of things like that that were incorrect, that were sort of corrected in the film, but there was some misinformation in the book originally as to what the car was and what features it had. But interesting enough, they wanted to spend so much on the effects that he didn't want to cast any big stars, but the studio had sort of pushed at one point for Brooke Shields and Scott Baio to be in it. Thank God that didn't happen, particularly Scott Baio. Although...
No Charles and Charles for you?
Oh, no, especially not with who Scott Baio has become. It just...
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, but it sours the whole thing. But originally cast as Arnie was Kevin Bacon. And I love that idea. I can see somehow a crossover with Footloose where John Lithgow gets run over by a flaming Christine. I think that's how it could work. So
only because you almost ran over John Lithgow.
Because I did almost run over John Lithgow. But look, he stepped in front of my car, and it was an 86 Volvo.
I don't think it would have mattered if he was dead.
No, and the truth is there were witnesses, but I still think I would have been the one blamed. Madman kills John Lithgow. But he was crossing the street from a restaurant, and he was talking to somebody. And when he got to the other side, they were still talking, and he didn't look, and he stepped back into the street to continue the conversation and just kept walking toward the person. And I had to slam on my brakes not to run him down. And this was an 87 Volvo 240, so it's a fucking tank. It would have just destroyed him. And, he kind of sheepishly waved and walked past, and I just thought, oh my God, if I had killed John Lithgow.
So I wonder what he thinks about, when that happened, if that moment, changes his life or something.
Do you think from then something shifted from...
Yeah, when you have, near-death experiences, a lot of shit shifts. I'm just saying, I wonder. Hey, John Lithgow, people who know John Lithgow, let us know.
Do you even remember that moment of that faded blue Volvo 240 bearing down on you? I remember you were wearing a hat. I think it was a beret. And on a final note, if you find the neighborhood where Arnie lives and Christine lurks familiar, it's because it's the same neighborhood where Carpenter shot Halloween. So the property values in that neighborhood must really suck, because it is a fucking haunted ass street.
No, people want to live there. It wouldn't suck. It'd actually be the opposite.
I'm saying in the movie world, if all these things are happening on this block, no one's going to want to live there. Yes, in our reality, fuck yeah, I'd want to live on the block, the Halloween block.
Fuck you, I'm not living on the Halloween block.
You don't want to live in the Michael Myers house?
No, go F yourself.
Oh, if people haven't heard earlier episodes, listen back for Joelle's thoughts on Michael Myers.
I was fine until that damn haunted house. And now we're on to soundtrack smash-ins. So did you have any? Well, the soundtrack is actually, there's two different. There's a score and there's a soundtrack. So the soundtrack is really riddled with just who's of Motown pretty much. And Buddy Holly, and you got Little Richard. You have all these great golden oldies pretty much on there. So, did you have a favorite?
I love John Carpenter's work. I love his scores. I love his synthesizer.
Oh, the score or the soundtrack?
The score.
Okay.
But you know what? I'm going to have to give it to George Thorogood for Bad to the Bone.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I was it's so freaking perfect. That assembly line with Bad to the Bone, it was just really, really perfect.
When it starts on that beat and you start in that shot on the fan and move down to the assembly line, it sets the mood perfectly.
It does.
And because I feel bad that he was such a poor actor that they cut his scene from the film, that
I don't know that, but I still picked that song because it was amazing. It's perfect. It was really perfect.
But like I said, if you have never heard the score, there actually is a new release on vinyl, and it has blood spatter on the vinyl. So it's fantastic, but I highly recommend that.
And if you want to get the 1983 original vinyl of the soundtrack, it's pretty easy to come by, and it only costs you $20 or $30 for a pretty good copy.
Yeah. Again, it's not really considered one of the classics. It's not like a Escape from New York or Halloween, but still, I think it's pretty great.
Yeah, still pretty good. So, hey, why? I don't know, you might have covered it before, but why show me this movie?
Well, Part of it was because of that connection to my grandfather and to my history with cars, because we all have our own personal story of our life with cars, because we do live in a car culture, and most of us have had a car unless you live in a city with great public transportation. I've known a few people in my life who have never owned a car or don't own one currently because they live in like Manhattan or something, and it's just far too freaking expensive to own it. But I feel like it connected to my history with cars, and also because I was someone who grew up with a lot of nostalgia for the 50s and for the past. And as my life has gone on, I have really been awakened to the fact that, the past was not good for everyone. And so I feel like that nostalgic, gauzy lensed view of the past is not very accurate. And this film sort of turns that image of everything from the 50s being wholesome and pure on its head nicely. So, maybe it wants to make Plymouth great again.
Nice try.
But yes, I love that it flips that around, that it really inverts that.
So I definitely say this is like a popcorn movie. I mean, this could be a pizza movie.
Yeah. Although you don't want to watch it with your mother.
No, I would not watch it with my mother, but it's definitely a pizza movie. Not everything for the whole family, maybe, but if you have some older teenagers, whatever, they might be a little uncomfortable. It's fine.
Well, especially when, what is the word that they use?
No, I don't want to use the word.
There is a terrible word early on used to describe a woman, and it was one of the ones I asked my grandfather about, and he refused to explain. So
good for you, Pat. Yeah, but overall, I think a pretty good movie. I think the special effects definitely hold up. If you can get through the pacing, just know it's going to be a slow burn, super slow. You're like, what the fuck's happening? Because most horror movies just don't operate that same way. But Carpenter really likes the slow burn moment.
And it works really well in some movies like Halloween, but that's because the anticipation of Michael Myers being there and the way you're in the camera watching Laurie and lurking around, and they get to the kill faster.
Yeah, they do get to the kill faster. Yeah. And I mean, Christine killed at the top, but then there was like a long pause until you really understood what she was or what was really happening.
But once it gets going, once there's the sequence after they tear up the car, which is a gut-wrenching sequence to watch them tear up this, and to see the result of their tearing up Christine. But once she revives herself and everything after, it moves at a pretty good click at that point.
I agree. I totally agree with that.
Now here's a question for you.
Okay.
Spoiler, at the end of the movie, Christine is destroyed by a tractor.
She's not destroyed.
She's stopped. And in the book, it was actually a big truck called Petunia, that big pink truck they used to crush her. And this one's a tractor, and they run her over, and then they crush her into a little cube. And you see just the slightest bit of movement indicating that she's still in there. So the question is, does she eventually find a way to revive herself, or does she become that dancing Pepsi can in Golden Child?
No, she totally revives herself. That's the whole point, isn't it? Is that no matter how badly you beat her, she's always going to go ahead and reform and come back badder than ever.
Just like a great woman, huh?
Exactly. Except for we shouldn't beat women.
No, I mean, but no matter how far she gets pushed down, yeah.
Yes, she just comes back and she's great.
Now, this was a big difference in the book. After they destroy it, Lee is living in New Mexico, of all places, and Dennis is living somewhere else, and I think Pennsylvania, and he hears about one of the bullies who survived originally being killed in some kind of freak car, like hit and run or something, and he starts to fear that Christine is going to work her way back across the country, taking out everyone who was left from the end of the story.
See, I like that ending way better.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Now, what I wouldn't have liked is that in the movie, of course, Christine accidentally kills Arnie, and she obviously feels pain from that. She dims her lights, and she feels bad because she really needs that connection with a person. And it seems like she loved Arnie in her twisted way as much as he loved her. In the book, because it's the soul of LeBay, Arnie and his mom are killed in a car crash on the way to check out a college, but people said they saw a third person in the car. It's supposed to be like the soul of LeBay after Christine is crushed, comes out and tries to reclaim Arnie, and they have a car crash while they're fighting or something. And, it doesn't really work. And what I feel like that connects to is in a lot of Stephen King books, the books would not work well as films. They have to be adapted a certain way, and they don't always work. And what I hear as a complaint from a lot of people is that there's too much vagueness for some people. Like, how did Christine become bad? I want to know how this all happened. And he's intentionally very vague. I feel intentionally very vague. Some say, oh, it's just lazy. But what I think is that sometimes that true horror comes from not knowing why. Like, if someone's out to get you or out to kill you, you want to know why. Why are you doing this? Why are you after me? But if you don't know, that's even more terrifying, to not know why someone wants to do you harm. There may not even be a real reason. It just may be what they do. But I think
there's always a reason. What it might just not have anything to do with you.
To do with you personally.
It might have to do with your victim typology.
Exactly.
Right.
But you always want to think it's something personal. Why'd you pick me? What is it about me?
Maybe that's because we're egocentric, and sometimes it's not about you.
We are.
Sort of like affairs. Like, it's never really about the actual other person.
Right.
Yep. It's always about the person committing the act.
And that's why I think that King's work is very effective that way, is that he does leave things to the imagination and for us to sort of try and fill in those gaps as to the whys and hows sometimes.
No, I would totally agree. I mean, that's part of books, is that it leaves you to your own imagination, right? It's not being spelled out for you on a screen.
Yeah, exactly. And it's why not all of King's books adapt well at all, and why some have not been, is because I just don't think, without a lot of work. Now, some of his fiction, like Shawshank Redemption and Stand By Me, are very short books. They're part of, a collection of short stories, but they've been fleshed out really well by good screenwriters and great filmmakers like Frank Darabont, who did Shawshank, did an amazing job of
Shawshank every time it comes on. Every time it comes on.
Yes. And it is, if you read the original short story, it is very different. And a lot of the great details that make that film so good are not in the original story. The bare bones are there, and it's still a great story. But he did a lot of great work. And of course, Darabont has done a number of King adaptations, like Green Mile, too.
So I think that's pretty much a good analysis, though, of Christine in her 110-minute glory. I think we've almost given it that much.
So yes, it sounds like we both recommend watching Christine. And if you're not into some gore for the holidays, there's very little actual blood in Christine. It's more about the terror of being chased by a flaming car.
Really, yeah. There's very little blood. I don't even consider it truly horrific. I don't know. Maybe I'm jaded.
Yeah, I would say some of the language at the beginning might be more horrific to some than the actual killings.
Exactly.
So now on a closing note,
sure.
Speaking of creepy movies, I want to harken back. I have made a new discovery. There was a line in an earlier movie that we watched where they say something to the degree of "the sun is my enemy and it's coming soon and I must move on," or something to that degree. And what I think that indicates is that Max Dugan is actually a vampire. So I think, that's my new segment, is Max Dugan is, and in this case, I think he is a vampire.
I'm not going to dignify that with a response.
Because he's always wearing sunglasses and big coats and a hat. He's got to protect himself from the sun.
Thank you so much for listening to You Haven't Seen What? Please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. And check out our website at youhaven'tseenwhatmovie.com. We'll go ahead and we'll put up some of those fun John Carpenter videos for you under this episode. Also, check out social media, Insta, Facebook, Twitter at You Haven't Seen What Movie, and let us know what you think. And check out our posts in October. We've been doing like spooky, scary movies We're trying to do 31. We'll get there eventually. And
We might have to move more toward Thanksgiving.
No. We've watched quite a bit. It's just we haven't necessarily posted every day.
We've had a busy month.
PhD life. So check us out. And thanks so much for listening and continuing to listen. We appreciate it. And we hope you derive some entertainment. If not, find a new love of different movies you haven't seen before.
Indeed.
I'm waiting on you now.
Oh, I thought you start. No. So remember,
So remember,
be kind.
rewind. Bye.
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 So you'd be okay if I wanted to get another classic car after this, wouldn't you? Could we make some room in the garage?
Sure, let's get rid of all your shit.
Okay. I'd like a Thunderbird this time, I think.
Okay.
Cool.